Welcome to Who You Were with Patrick Noth and Sebastian Canelli. In each episode, we ask our guests to talk about a time in their life when they were significantly different.
Yeah, it feels reasonable. I mean, maybe it's not.
It feels reasonable.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But before it felt so intense that I've changed my. Oh no, this is much better.
Yeah, this is great. Do you think that's what what's Ira Glass? Do you think his is turned all the way up? It's sensitive.
Turn it all the way up for me. He literally, no one knows this. Ira Glass literally whispers every show like a secret. No one knows what it is until they check the playback and turn it all the way up. Like, oh my god, I thought he was just sitting there quietly for an hour. Chapter one.
Nobody else in the studio can hear it at all.
Yeah.
Did you like him when you met Ira?
Oh yeah. Well, I met Ira. I've met him a couple of times, but the first time I met him, it was at when Birbiglia was doing these like reads at his house of the script.
Oh.
And
yeah, I forgot. Don't think twice.
Yeah, and he was just having people over to do readings of the different drafts, and it was awkward because I missed Ira was doing the thing where he introduced himself to everyone, and he was about to be introduced to me, and Mike comes in the room and he's like, okay, let's get going. And I was like, oh, okay, well now it's awkward.
Sure.
And then when it was over, I had the only note that I had in the whole process of the script. I had one note, and it was kind of a big one, where I'm like, well, this happened. He had a plot line originally where that producer, have you seen Don't Think Twice?
Yes.
That producer comes in and is like, you should have a big show. In the earlier drafts of it, he was like a Spanish prisoner style, scam artist. Like he conned them out of like 10 grand or something. And they go back to his office and it's just gone. It's like now it's like a laundromat or something.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I don't know that anyone would ever do that. Like I've only seen that in movies. I'm like, you don't scam improvisers that way. Like you scam them by starting an improv school.
It's already a scam.
It's already a scam.
Too derivative.
And I said, you want to know what would really happen? I said, what would really happen? I said, Stone Cold Fox was a sketch team I was on, and
of course.
We sold out every Friday night that we had a show at UCB.
Please, I was interning when you were there.
Right. It was always sold out. It was always a huge hit. We did the Fringe Festival, and we could not get double-digit audience members, and we killed ourselves promoting the show and going everywhere, postcard and flyering and everything, and we just couldn't get an audience. And I said, that's what would happen, and that's what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
But when I gave that note, Ira was standing there, and Ira goes, yeah, well, that's really a whole other story, though, isn't it? And I was like, oh, shit, that's the worst burn you could get from Ira Glass. Because I'm like, if there's one thing this guy knows, it's like, what is a story and what is not what is part of this? It's just like, that's more like chapter 2.
Oh, my God.
But then the next time I met him was when we were filming the movie. And
so you've met him a lot.
Yeah, and I had him on George Lou's talk show, and I had him on Way Past Your Bedtime. He's on both of my stupid talk shows. He's so up for fun stuff, you know. And he did but he came over and I was talking to someone about the show Treme, and he came up to me on set on Don't Think Twice, and I was talking to someone else about Treme, and he's like, is that a good show? Is Treme good? And I was like, let me tell you about Treme. I was like, this is the perfect, this is the conversation I want to have is I want to explain Treme, what's good about it, what's bad. Like I want to, it's mostly great, but I was like, it's a show that is like, it's great, but when an episode ends, I don't have the desire to watch the next episode. But then when I start watching the next episode, I'm like, why did I wait? This is great. You know,
there's no clip.
There's it does a weird thing where it almost feels like it satisfies you and then you're done with it.
Yeah.
But I had this great. So after that, we were pals. You know?
And then so he liked that story.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was intrigued by my take on Treme, I think, and
I felt like such an asshole when I met him.
You were great with him
because I only know how to be loud and obnoxious, and he's like a sweater man.
But you made him laugh though.
Yeah, well, you better fucking believe it.
Wait, when did you meet him?
Because I did Connor's show, Way Past Your Bedtime. And so basically...
you met him dressed as a giant monster of laundry clothes.
Sure. And I asked him, I always think about this. I said, what's your biggest fear? And he said, every night before I go to bed, I'm scared that I won't wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Don't fucking say shit like that to a weak man like me.
Now you have it. You took it on.
And someone else's fear was like, oh, sharks. I was like, oh, fuck that. That's not going to scare me, but I go to sleep every night. And one morning I won't wake up.
You do get scared about stuff. I've talked to you about like.
I'm a coward.
We talked about that one Bob Dylan video that one time.
Yeah, I can't.
Which Bob Dylan video scares you?
Where he literally, it's like an interview on 60 Minutes where he kind of alludes to the fact that maybe he sold his soul to the devil.
Oh, and that scared you?
Yeah, it scares me because you know what scares me about it? Not that he did it, but how weak I am, and if the devil came to me, how quickly I would sign.
Yeah.
How quick, Connor? 2 seconds. He wouldn't even have to say, "Are you sure?" I would literally. I'm such a.
What are you gonna take? What would you take from the devil?
Probably a fat dick. A fatter dick. I'm already pretty funny.
All I need now.
Sebastian, wouldn't you like to be funnier?
Honestly, I would. Maybe my
I think the devil probably would only have like an extra like 3% to give you. He's like, you're already almost maxed out.
Oh, my dick you're talking about?
Yeah. There's that comedy. I learned a similar thing. It's scary when you learn those things about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you always have that big question about like, well, what would I do if things got really in a crisis or if things got bad? Would I be one of the people who's like, let me on the boat or whatever? You're just like, a few years ago when I was on eBay bidding for a jacket that I wear for my George Lucas talk show, and they had a Howard the Duck crew jacket from the making of the movie, and it was up to like $70 or something. It was real cheap. It was early in the bidding, and I was like looking for it. I'm like, I'm going to wear this in every show.
Yeah.
It'll be like a permanent costume, and I'm like, I can go up to 150. That was my absolute limit. Like I can afford that.
Yes.
And in the final like 40 seconds of that bidding, someone else started going after me.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I went up to almost 250 in seconds. And in that moment, I knew I could feel it happening because it was like a monster took over.
Yeah.
I could feel that if someone had asked me anything, where they're like, we're going to kill this person and feel, and you'll get the coat. Press this button and I would be like, I would have punched someone in the face. I would have done anything in those moments. There was nothing but me and the want.
Sure. The lizard inside of you came out.
And I was like, I went over, well over what I could afford without thinking about it. And I'm like, what would I do? And yeah, for the dumbest thing in the world. I'm like, what would I do if things got really serious? You know,
the funniest part is it's for comedy. Like it's like the lizard came out for a bit.
Yes.
And you're like, I fucking need this bit.
For a bit, honestly, that my back is to the like the only way you know it's a Howard the Duck jacket is that it's on the back of the jacket, and the audience doesn't see my back during the show.
Did you ever address how much you spent on it to the audience?
I've mentioned it a few times.
Have to.
Well, it's also one of those things where with every show that I wear it becomes less expensive, and then it's like now it's like if I were going to rent it, it would be like $6 a show or something. You know, it's like
great.
Welcome to Who You Were. My name is Patrick Noth.
Sell the intro. Come on, what's this bullshit?
Welcome to Who You Were. My name is Patrick Noth.
I'm Sebastian Canelli, and so today you heard him talk for a second before. We got Connor Ratliff.
Yeah.
Hey, hello. Thank you.
Yes, you know him. He's was from the Chris Gethard show. He was
now canceled.
Thank you. I'll show you. Only bring up things that you aren't on anymore. He did the CISO series where he debated for cats.
Now canceled.
He did Frank the Snitch Christmas.
Now canceled. No. Hire me for your currently running shows.
No, he's like literally the best improviser in New York.
Oh, that's probably a very sweet thing to say.
No, I don't fuck. I'm not sweet. I'm honest.
We also said that. I also said that to Alex Dixon. So I feel like you guys are top.
Sure. I mean, whenever I'm like talking about anyone asks me improv questions, they go, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I go, "Well, when Connor's on stage, he does this."
Yeah.
Oh, that's really nice.
I always reference what you do on stage. Now, I'm not asking for your opinion about what you do.
Yeah.
Because I think that you are too eccentric to articulate that sometimes.
Well, it's the reason I'm not a teacher.
Yes.
You know, I don't teach improv. I think I'm a pretty decent coach.
Yeah.
But I'm bad with the curriculum.
I think you're a good director.
I don't know if I'm a good director. I haven't really directed enough and I don't like it.
Sure.
I don't like being in charge in that way.
Really? Well, I think that I always reference you, and because I think what you do is incredible.
Well, thank
You're
you.
able to snap into embody people. You
always committed.
Yeah, always committed. Your characters don't find themselves funny.
Well,
which is so beautiful.
It's funny, a couple of years ago, I was coaching a group, and I something came out of me that I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this before. It's not a normal, like, when there's certain things that, like, improv teachers, like, talk about, and I feel like when I'm coaching, I never talk about that stuff. And I can hear myself saying stuff to, like, I've coached, like, Herald teams where I've said things where I'm like, oh, you don't need to worry about second beats. Like, who cares?
Sure.
No, but I remember there was a point where I was very upset about, like, seeing people do comedy where they would do, like, characters who were shitty, and you felt like they thought the character was shitty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I remember giving someone a note that I'm like, if you're improvising a character and you create a character and you know this character's an asshole, that's fine. And it's good to be aware of that. And it's important to be aware of that. But you need to reserve some percentage of yourself to be in their corner, because they only exist because you created them. This character only, like, you birthed this character, and everyone in the audience is going to be against them. All the other characters on stage are going to be against them. All they have is you. All that character has is you.
Yeah.
And you can know that the character is, like, a horrible person, but you need, and I said, I don't care if it's 5% or 20. For me, I like to give 50. I like to give a solid, like, 50% where it's like, I'm going to advocate for this character I created. I'm going to try to get what they want. I'm going to be on their side. Even if sometimes you have to also, you can't just, like, create a horrible character and then present it as if it's wonderful.
Yes.
You know the function of it within the scene, but I'm like, you need to, like, set aside a little bit, almost like the way you set aside money in your paycheck for, like, savings or something. Where it's like, just set aside a responsible amount to just be like, when I need to, I will advocate for you in the way that I do the scene. I will try to, rather than, like, everybody working against the character that you created.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of that? Because if I find myself to be, like, a very shitty character, I will try to at least be vulnerable at some point, like, just because, like, I feel like then you can get away with being mean more, or you can get away with being a shitty person.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of it. It's just knowing that this character doesn't necessarily think they're shitty, and this character has things that they want.
Right.
Try to get some of those things in the scene. Like, try to make some of those things happen. It's that hard thing, is when you're improvising, you're doing that. This isn't the example of that, but, like, you're doing that thing where you're writing a comedy scene or a scene or whatever, and then you're also acting it.
Yeah.
So the example I always think of as my default thing is, like, if you're playing a dad whose daughter is embarrassed of him, and you know that you're embarrassing and you don't want to be embarrassing, but then the writer part of you is like, I have to keep thinking of embarrassing things to do. But the actor part of you has to keep being like, I'm not trying to. So it's like, honey, I know this is your birthday party, and I know that you didn't want me to make a speech, but I wrote you a song, and it's about how I feel. But it's like, the writer part of you knows, like, song by a dad at a birthday party for a teenage girl, that's embarrassing.
Yes.
But the actor part of you has to be like, no, this will work. I have a song.
I deserve this. I deserve this.
And she will like this, and this will win her over. And so it is like having to sort of serve two masters. But it is that thing of, like, that is my main thing when I'm improvising, is like having some big part of me always be like, okay, well, I made this character happen, so even if everybody else is against me, I can't fully be, like, I have to, like, be there for, like, it's your creation, you know?
Yeah, and even if just the little thing of, like, I know you don't want me to do blank. You know what I mean? Just gives them that little,
but,
like,
I really think this will...
Yes.
I know you said you didn't want a song, but I think if you hear it, you'll see that it's heartfelt.
You're so good, Connor.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is going to be an uncomfortable question.
Oh, great.
I don't care.
Great.
How do you feel about yourself with improv? Do you feel like, because you have to know that you're, like, at the top right now, right? Do you feel that?
I'm peaking.
It's only downhill from here. Do you feel that? I just need to hear that someone, like, what they feel when they're there.
When I started learning improv, I knew I was funny, but I didn't know how to do it. The best thing that happened to me in that first improv class I took was I tried to be funny, and I realized, like, oh, it feels gross because I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
So then I didn't care about being funny for a long time, and I just, like, learned how to do it.
Yeah.
And it feels good. When I'm doing improv, it feels good. And it's interesting because it's an art form that is often a punchline, because, like, even talking about it is, like, feels ridiculous in some ways. But, like, and this will tie into some of the maybe the deeper themes we're going to get into, is that what I feel about it is that it's helped me and it's also hurt me in the sense of how I look at life, because it's ephemeral. It's completely just like it's over the second you're doing it. Yep. You know, like it's ending while you're. It's destroying itself while it's creating itself, sort of. And I used to be very hung up on. I wanted to create a body of work, and I wanted to like have like a legacy. Like I wanted to like I looked at all the things I liked, and I wanted those things to be. I wanted to have like a TV show. I wanted to have like movies that I wanted to have like things that I made. And over the past decade or so, I've really gotten to the point where I realized that is an illusion, and that, you know, this year I've watched. I'm done with it. I can't keep watching them. I've watched more than one depressing documentary about comedians that I admire.
Sure, what you watched?
So I watched the Gary Shandling one. Which is great.
Yeah. So good.
Watched the Robin Williams one, and then I was like, I can't watch another one. I can't watch another one because the second half of each one of them is just too much. Because you realize that it's like Robin Williams did all this great stuff, and he never stopped trying to do great work. Like that's one thing that I think about Robin Williams a lot. He had a reputation, I think, later on in his career that it was like he was doing, what was that, like Road Dogs or Old Dogs, whatever those. I can't remember which ones.
Yeah.
But he had the reputation for doing certain bad, sort of hacky movies.
Yeah. Sure.
But if you look at his IMDb, like every year, if he did a movie that year that you think was bad, that same year he probably did an indie movie that, whether it was good or bad, it was trying.
Yes.
Like, he never stopped doing interesting work.
He's an incredible actor, too.
Yeah. So good. And I don't think I've ever been happier for someone winning an Oscar than I was for him winning Good Will Hunting. Because I was like, it's the perfect performance to win an Oscar for, because it's not too flashy. It's not him trying. It's just him naturally being true to his like natural personality. It wasn't even like, almost like if he'd won one for like Good Morning Vietnam, it would be like, for what a great like comedy performer he is.
Yeah.
But like, Good Will Hunting in some ways I feel like meant more because it was like drawing on him in his natural state, not in his like trying to please you state.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Shandling one though, like, I mean, there was something in there that I liked in terms of like, I wasn't terrified by, I should say. Like, you know, like with him just trying to find some kind of like inner happiness as opposed to like chasing this thing that's never going to make him happy.
Yeah, no, that one made me sad just because I'm sad that he's gone.
Sure.
And I'm also sad that like the whole second half of that, I'm sad as a fan because I wanted him to have a third thing.
Yeah.
That was also that. But actually, you're right. I think he was finding other things, and was less concerned with like whether he had a third masterpiece.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so weird because we now at least think of that as a failure, but it probably wasn't for him as an emotional person.
Also, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh God!
No, in
God!
this sense,
Remember how I told you I was weak?
No, it's true. It's true.
It's and I struggle with this, but like and this is, if we're going to bracket this in terms of like who I was, who I am.
Yeah, thank you for helping us organize our podcast.
Should we? Well, yeah, we bring on a comedian. We ask them about a time in their life when they were significantly different.
Do this now.
How the fuck?
How dare you? How dare you, Patrick?
What do you mean? How dare you?
Because everyone knows already.
Who knows?
All the 12 people that listen.
We have a lot of listeners, man. We have so many listeners. Right, we have fucking 3,000 unique downloads, Sebastian. We have advertisers. We have advertisers knocking at our door.
All right. So bridge the gap.
Yeah. I like to, when you get something like that, like 3,000 downloads. I always like to just picture that in terms of like a venue.
Wow.
And you just think like, holy shit.
Yeah.
It'd be like that would be the Beacon Theater would be like people outside would be like, how many people does the Beacon Theater set?
I have no idea.
I think it's less than 3,000. So imagine the Beacon Theater is sold out and there's like 500 people outside trying to get in.
I only did that because every show now he's like, nobody fucking listens to this. And like, what if there's a new person? We're going to bring on a comedian. We're going to ask them about a time in their life where they're significantly different. I mean, dude, you're mean to me, every episode. You're mean.
I'm so sorry. Sorry you have to deal with our shit.
No.
Can you believe this? He's chewing gum again.
I am chewing gum. I'll take a gum.
I don't know why that's bad for audio, because it's active. That's like action in a visual shot. Like, shouldn't extra noises be like the equivalent of having motion in a shot? Yeah. If it was a film?
Wow.
And yet people don't. Actually, one of the worst things,
like licking your lips. You should lick your lips.
I bought the DVD set for Fawlty Towers, the John Cleese series, and it had. I was looking to see, like, I was hoping it had good extras, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't have commentary by Cleese, but it's commentary by like the guy who directed all the episodes or a bunch of the episodes. And I started listening to the episode, and the guy's like, hello, I'm Nigel Woodford, and it was just like, he was making mouth noises even while he was saying words. I was like, I don't know how he's doing this. It's like the people who can sing 3 notes at once. Everything was weird. And I listened to like 2 notes. I was like, I can't listen to this guy like chew his cud through this whole episode.
We kind of want to know like some context for the time. Like, what year are we or like, how old were you?
Do I have to pick one specific time? Because I think I have 2 other who I wases that are related, maybe.
We'd love to hear about all of them.
The first one, let's say I'm a kid. Let's say up to age 10 or 11.
Okay.
And all of my childhood, all I wanted to be was a cartoonist. That's the only thing I wanted.
Really?
An animator or just a cartoonist?
I want to be an animator, and I was obsessed with animation.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to do like comic strips, comic books. I wanted to do it all, but I wanted to make cartoons and comics.
And you love comics
still,
I do. To this day. I know. I see you post about them all the time.
Yeah.
Have you been to the Charles Schulz Museum?
I haven't, but I think about it all the time. Even though it's like far away from anything, right?
Yeah, it's Northern California.
Yeah, but it's not near. It's like in a little town, right?
Yeah, it's in a little town. But you love it so much.
I should just drive. I should just get in a car and
drive.
Get in a car. Like, how much could it cost for me to drive to California?
I don't know. It costs you $500 to get there and get back.
I should do it.
They have some cool ones up at upstate at Blue Sky. They have a bunch of cells.
Oh, with the animation series?
Yeah, they got a bunch of his original
They made
cells.
the Peanuts movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what made you want to do that?
I mean, my dad hosted a kids show on TV. He was a local weatherman and a kids show host. If you look up Showtime and maybe KRCG or Showtime and My Name or something, you'll see some clips I have on YouTube of him hosting the show.
Wow.
So where is this?
This is in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Okay.
Where I born and grew up there entirely. It's the state capital. And my dad was a weatherman, and he was hosted this kids show host where it was like him, and he had a guy who did puppets, and a live studio audience was all kids. And
were you at every show?
I wasn't at every show because I had school and I had the other, but up until age 10, that's what he was.
Was there a live audience? Like a lot of kids?
Of kids. There was like 2 rows of kids.
Pulling kids out of school.
Yeah, like groups would come, like they would bus kids in.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so it'd be like, these kids are from Osage Beach or whatever, from some class. And the kids would all get little bags of potato chips. I remember it was like, and there would be segments sometimes. There wasn't always an audience, but when there was an audience, there'd be a segment where my dad would go through and would talk to the kids, and the kids would be like, it would mostly just be to say hi, where it'd be like, hi, what's your name? And the kid would say, my name's Jenny. Like, and Jenny, is there anyone you want to say hi to? My mom and dad and Billy. And it'd just be, it's so precious when you see these things, because like a lot of times it's like little kids with glasses, which I always think there's something about like a little kid with glasses that's like, oh, they're like...
You guys see the Mr. Rogers documentary?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So good.
Was your dad doing this during like Mr. Rogers era?
Oh yeah, it's like mid-70s through mid-80s.
So was these one of the shows that Mr. Rogers didn't like, according to the doc?
No, I don't think so. Well, here's the thing. The cartoons they showed were things that probably Mr. Rogers was like, well, why does Daffy Duck have to be so mean?
Right.
Yes.
He lives near bugs. Why aren't they friends? And he has to work with him all the time. I just think it's a shame that Daffy is... they're both successful celebrities within the Looney Tunes world, and yet he's so envious. And I think Bugs is a little mean-spirited sometimes. I don't like when Bugs dresses as a woman to confuse him. If Bugs worked on my show, I would tell him, you can't do that. You can't do that anymore. if you get caught dressing like a woman.
Holy shit.
I love that documentary.
Sure.
I really like the fact that documentary, even though you have that fascinating segment where the guy who plays is it the cop or the mailman? I can't remember that.
Mr. McFeely. No, not Mr. McFeely. Well, I don't know. What are you going to say?
Yeah, the one who, and Mr. Rogers is basically like
the cop,
and he's like, you can't get caught doing this. Like you can't, if you're at a gay club and someone finds out about it, then we can't keep you on the show. And it's just a matter of fact thing. What I love about the complexity of that is, they showed that in terms of like, he was like doing a segment where it was him and the cop and they're bathing their feet in the water.
Yeah.
And how that was his way of signaling like, that he was pro like civil rights. That it was like, I'm friends with this character, with this other, like they're friends, and he was doing that as like,
well, because it was centered around the time when like
the water fountains and segregation,
and, pools that like you get sick from being in a pool with a black person.
Yeah, but at the same time, if that actor had been outed in the mid 1970s, it certainly would have. It's not hard to imagine that being the end of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because there would have been such an uproar
at
the time. Wow. So you're like, it's a bad thing, and certainly it's a bad thing looking at it from 2018. But it's also like, well, these things move at a certain you can make progress on one thing and still have work to do on another thing, and that doesn't invalidate the other, and it doesn't make Fred Rogers like, well, we'll just dismiss him. He was a homophobe or he was a bigot in this. It's just like, this was a complicated thing to navigate, and this was the way it shook out back then. And we can look at it now and be like, that's very sad. But even that guy was like, he was like a father to me. And it's more about.
Didn't Mr. Rogers go to him in the future and say like, I love you, and like, I'm so happy that you're gay, and that not I'm happy that you're.
Yeah,
I can't find my words.
But it was like,
he wrote a book called "I'm Happy That You're Gay."
No, but I just liked that documentary embraced the complexity of that. But no, my dad, like the cartoons they show would be like Popeye cartoons or Looney Tunes. Sure. And so but my dad's demeanor was, I think my dad was funnier than Fred Rogers. Like, but his demeanor was like, I don't talk down to kids. He had like a gentle on-air demeanor, but he'd be like, the puppets would be like wild and funny. My dad would kind of be the straight man to the puppets. There'd be like a puppet. There was a puppet called Ralph the Clown. There was a puppet called Gomer, who was like this weird green cow. I have all these puppets in my apartment.
Wow.
And there's a character named I think Buzzy, and this puppet's so weird because the puppet basically looks like it's a huge penis for a nose. Like, I've never shown this puppet to someone where they haven't been like, that's horrible. But at the time, it was just this weird creature that went.
And no one thought it was no one even considered it might be a penis.
I'm fascinated by the way things change, the way standards change, because like, and I think you're both too young to acknowledge this, but when, the movie Field of Dreams.
Yep.
Sure. Kevin Costner, Build It, They Will Come.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else.
Yeah. But here's the thing. When that movie came out, I do not recall a single joke on the playground about the fact that there was a movie that the catchphrase from it was, if you build it, they will come.
Yes.
Yeah. You could not do that now. And it's not that wasn't terminology.
Yeah.
It's just the internet, I think. The memes. Like, it's the memes.
It's the memes.
It's the fucking memes.
But you couldn't have a sincere song now called "It Was the Summer of '69." Like,
right.
That song couldn't exist now. And it's not that term didn't exist, but things shift in terms of what we are willing to acknowledge. I think a lot of it was, some of it's the internet, some of it was like the Star Report and Monica Lewinsky like shifted what we could talk about, or what was acknowledged.
Well, it used to be also like Cheech and Chong movies. Like, essentially the premise is they get high.
Right.
You know what I mean? And now it's like, that's not even like a afterthought, really. Right. I mean, it's an afterthought. It's not a comedic.
But it's not enough to build your whole movie.
No.
But anyway, so I grew up with this, watching my dad. It was a great job as a kid to have your dad have this show, because it was a thing that I was like inherently interested in what my dad did for a living.
Yeah.
And I just watched all these cartoons obsessively, and all I wanted to do was be a cartoonist.
What was your favorite, Warner Brothers or?
Well, I mean, I was pretty obsessive about Disney, but Warner Brothers was definitely the funniest, and I definitely but also like Warner Brothers, as great as Warner Brothers is, everything is in reaction to what Disney did. So like, if Warner Brothers was funnier than Disney, it was because Disney was already funny and Warner Brothers was like, well, we have to be funnier.
Right.
Okay. It's the Burger King to McDonald's.
Yeah. So it's like, sometimes people are like, they'll sort of slag off Warner Brothers as if like they're the ones who did good cartoons. And it's like, well, no, everyone was trying to exist in reaction to what Disney, because Disney was always, they were always the people who would do it first.
Yeah.
What was your Disney movie of choice as a kid?
I've always liked Pinocchio a lot.
Sure.
I still, that's one.
It's scary.
Pinocchio and Bambi were the two I just think they're perfect movies still.
Well, it's confusing actually for a little boy for Pinocchio to be their favorite movie.
Yeah.
That's very confusing.
It is, because it has like, there's stuff that happens in Pinocchio that's darker than almost any other movie you could think of.
Yeah.
Like there are scenes in Pinocchio that, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, that's Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah, with
like
the
that
fucking the donkey shit.
The donkeys, those boys, those bad boys who go to Bad Boy Island, are turned into donkeys and sent to the salt mines. And nothing that happens with Pinocchio's plot line has any of. You do not get the impression that when this movie's over, Pinocchio's going to be like, Geppetto, we have to go. There's this thing happening. Like, I don't think anybody thinks for a second that Pinocchio. I mean, if you were to make a follow up to Pinocchio about a real boy who had that experience, I'm not sure what kind of life he could have. Because imagine the child.
Grown up Pinocchio is so fucking.
Grown up Pinocchio, like, is his mission in life? It's like, I can't stop thinking about those donkey boys.
Probably his mission will be to be a fake man. He probably will realize he hates that he's a real man.
He wants to be a wooden man. Yeah, please turn me back into wood.
He goes, why? What my curse was? My gift was my curse.
Do you remember Stromboli?
Yeah,
I know the food.
Yeah,
the guy who puppet master, the guy who like puts him in his show.
Him. Yeah, he kidnaps him.
Oh yes.
Yeah. The angriest, the angriest Italian man I've ever seen in a movie.
Named Stromboli.
Yeah, Stromboli and everything. Because he just starts to remember, it's just every scene, his body just explodes into those tight spaces. He's like, it's like.
I almost feel like with that dark stuff, they still like Pixar still has higher expectations for children than for adults. Like there's no there are some they're considered artsy films that have like heavy subject matter, and then most adults go see like Captain America or whatever.
Yeah. I just watched that stupid movie Smallfoot. Did I talk about this last podcast?
You mentioned Smallfoot.
All right, so I'm going to talk about it again. So the whole point of it is that like it's not good to keep secrets, and that it's better for us to talk about the hard issues, and we'll figure it out together rather than make up lies and keep secrets from people. And like, what adult movie is saying that?
Yeah,
that's like a complex thing. That could only be taught to us because the movie's so light and fun. So it gets you to a place where you feel open enough to talk about something that's heavy.
I remember when The Lion King came out, getting very angry because I read an interview where they were really promoting it, and this is their big prestige movie. And I like The Lion King, but I remember it really bothering me when someone at Disney, someone involved in the making and promoting of it, said that they were comparing it to Bambi and saying it was better than Bambi because in Bambi the mother dies. And then he just has to go on with life, and there's no closure. He just has to deal with it. And they were like, in The Lion King, he gets visited by his dad's ghost in the sky.
Right.
And they were saying this as if it was better. And I was like, I don't think that's better. I think that's, it's fine, but I don't think it's like, well, the good news for kids is that you'll get to learn that if something bad happens, there's all these magical things that'll happen, as opposed to like, Bambi was really about like, how your life changes, and sometimes you just have to deal with it.
Jesus.
I wonder if, like, watching that Mr. Rogers documentary, I know we're getting sidetracked, but if people who go into working on children's stuff are just people who have, want to give these messages to kids. Like, they're people who are, like, damaged in some way or be like, fuck, like, my childhood sucked, or the world is hard, and kids need to know, like, pressure. Like, because Mr. Rogers, too, he was, like, fucking talking about death. He was talking about all that. He was addressing, like, anything that would happen in the world,
Yeah. I also like, there were like movies like The Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos that were like these fun kind of, that was when like Disney was making this like, it was like a sort of diplomatic goodwill ambassador kind of films to South America.
Yeah.
But I remember them just looking very vibrant and crazy and fun.
I loved the Three Caballeros.
Yeah.
The song is
catchy. And the animation's so fun and so funny. And
have you guys ever watched those like wartime cartoons that people were commissioned to make?
Yeah.
Those are nuts. Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day about the fact that Donald Duck in one of those wartime cartoons, and there's not anything stereotypical, or because that Warner Brothers had more like stereotypical, where they have like Japanese characters and they'd be like really going at the all of the kind of racist tropes. But there's a Disney cartoon, I think, called Commando Duck, where
I've seen this.
Donald Duck drowns an entire army base in Japan. He floods it, and that's the triumphant end of. You don't see anybody die, but I'm like, Donald Duck killed like 1,000 people, and
imagine that at the Beacon Theater, how many people would?
No, but I do think about that in terms of like. Donald Duck, like if he like in the 50s is like losing his temper at his nephews, it's like this guy killed a lot of people not too long ago. And now of course he's like flipping his lid over everything.
Well, some of them were just for the soldiers though. Was that one just for the soldiers? Or
no, that was for general release. No, I have a DVD called Private Snafu.
Yeah, Private Snafu. Yeah, those are nuts.
My dad had all this stuff.
Which are all for the those are for the soldiers.
Only.
And so they have a little bit of sex in them and a little bit of profanity.
Yep. And it's like Mel Blanc doing the voice. It's like the best people.
Dr. Seuss writing the script for any of the rhyming ones were all written by Dr. Seuss.
Wow.
And
they had just like the best of the best.
And it's all just like lessons about like don't tell secrets because here's what'll happen, and like he gets people killed in like every single short.
So what made you? So you wanted to do cartoons then?
I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I worked hard at it, and I drew and I made comics, and I even tried to make like animated things on like Super 8 film, and
this is as you're 9 years old or something.
Yeah. And then I remember I had a cousin who at the time worked for Don Bluth Studios in Dublin, that's the studio that made like American Tail and Land Before Time and The Secret of Nim. He worked for them once the film started to get like I think they moved everything to Dublin and the film started being not as good.
Yeah.
Secret of Nim, that is fucking crazy.
Secret of Nim is a great movie.
Yes.
My cousin was working by the time they were doing films like
9 Inch Nails?
NIMH.
Oh, I never heard this one.
Oh my god, it's fucking dark.
You would love it.
Would I?
I think so.
I'm into cartoons.
It's intense.
It's really good.
I should watch.
I would watch it with you. I'd love to watch that.
Really?
With you. Yeah.
I watch that.
Let's plan on that.
Okay.
We'll all watch it.
What an afterthought! He looks at Patrick and goes, "We'll all watch it."
You know what? That's assuming that I want to watch it. I might not fucking want to go with you guys and watch that.
Oh my god,
I was offering, and then I realized that Patrick might want to watch it too, so I was making sure that he knew that.
Nah, I've already seen it. I'm gonna go.
He'll be smacking on his gum alone in his place. Secret of Nim.
Secret of Nim. But my cousin, by the time he was working on for Don Bluth, they were making films like Rockadoodle and A Troll in Central Park. Which
bad stuff.
Yeah, I've never seen them, but
you can tell from the title.
Yeah.
Rockadoodle.
A cheese doodle that plays the guitar.
That would have been better. No, this is about a rooster, I think.
Oh, okay.
But instead of saying cockadoodle, I think he might say rockadoodle. I don't know.
Well, that's fun. That's a nice play.
Sebastian, before cheese doodles stood for like cockadoodle.
Oh,
like the noise a rooster made.
Oh, really? No.
Cockadoodle doo. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, cockadoodle. Yeah, of course I heard of.
You ever do a rooster character who says that?
No, you know what? My character range is very tight. I don't think.
Think about mixing that one in.
Maybe you know what? Next time I do a show, maybe I'll be a rooster. I'll go cockadoodle doo. Watch out, coming through.
That's very good.
Oh, here I am, a rooster, cockadoodle doo.
Honestly,
don't fuck with me.
Don't fuck with me.
My only note for that improv show would be no one else walk on. This is the show. Like, I would watch a solid hour.
Just no context. No.
Honestly, I want to pitch this as a show. Dress you up like a rooster and call it cockadoodle doo, the rooster hour. And it's literally like it starts off and it's dawn and it's just you an hour's worth of improvised morning announcements by a rooster. I'm not even halfway kidding.
I know, Connor, you're a sicko. I know you're not halfway kidding.
That's such a good character.
But no, you know what?
It's so simple.
It would last. It would be good for 2 minutes.
Well, how about this? We'll do it, and I'll be the farmer, so I can come out and save you if I feel like you need extra stimulus.
Thank you. Yeah, well then
Patrick, you can be in the show too.
Oh my God. I'm not even fucking doing sketch anymore. God. I don't even fucking like comedy.
Yes, this will be sketch. We'll write it all out. All the cock-a-doodle-doo moments.
It's a tight hour.
All right, so
Michael Hartney, if you're listening to this, get ready for an email.
So I guess he wants Spanx.
Yeah, he wants Spanx.
We won't spank this.
No, we don't spank.
We don't spank.
Just straight to Friday night.
We got an opportunity. Yes or no? So anyway, I remember going and visiting my cousin at Don Bluth Studios, and I think what really happened was it's kind of a sad thing when I think about it, is that, although I'm glad it happened, is I really enjoyed drawing cartoons, and I really enjoyed trying to, like, I liked the idea, but then at a certain point it dawned on me that if it became my job, that I would have to do it. And that I didn't want to ruin what was fun about it. Even if I never did it again, I didn't want to ruin what was fun about trying to make cartoons, make comics, by making it be like, I saw, like, I had an uncle who's a genius. He was brilliant. Like, he was like a child prodigy, and he worked professionally as an artist, and he would do a lot of commercial art. He designed like jewelry, or he would like you'd buy a bread wrapper and you'd buy a loaf of bread and the wrapper, like, he would do the art on it. Like, he was just always working. And I remember seeing that. I remember seeing my cousin and seeing I think the first time walking through where people were doing animation was like, even though I knew I'd watched documentaries about how cartoons were made, what I realized was I wanted to make cartoons, which is different than working as an animator.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like the difference between being like the king of like a province or something and being like the person who works in the palace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just don't know how to get to, I don't know how to make cartoons, and I don't want to be an animator. I had this vision of myself at like 40 with my hand cramping up. And it's like, God. I got to do more drawings.
And this is you at like 11, 12?
Probably like 12 or 13-ish. Like, I started realizing, like, I think I did some cartoons in high school, and the more I did it, I was like, this isn't what I'm going to do. I also started doing plays in like community theater and school plays, and realizing, like, I like this more, and I don't imagine my acting muscles cramping at age 40 in a way that I had this real clear vision of what it would feel like to have, like, I have to draw more comic strips today, and my hand hurts. And I don't have hand problems. I just like,
well, you would have if you had to.
I might have, yeah. And I was like, I don't want this to be a thing that I regret going into.
Yeah. I don't have hand problems either.
I got hand problems. I broke my finger a ton of times.
Doing what?
Playing basketball, horsing around as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Jammed it?
No, I broke it. I broke it. I picked my words correctly, Patrick.
Oh, boy.
But that's the idea of, like, doing something, like, you didn't want to ruin something you loved.
Yeah, and I could see it coming. Like, I could see, like, that it would be a constant struggle. I thought there was a ceiling to how, I think I'm pretty good at drawing.
Yeah.
I can draw some things, but I could feel I didn't want to put in the work to learn the things I didn't know how to draw well. It felt too hard. I could draw some things. I could draw character faces pretty naturally.
Yeah.
If I had to draw a full figure body, I'd be like, it doesn't look right. It's hard. I have to like redraw it. Like,
yeah.
Couldn't draw a horse. There's just things I couldn't draw.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't want to ruin this. I like this. I'd rather stop doing it than get to a point where it's a drudgery for me.
Do you still draw in any way, or do any?
Yeah, I have I have a record coming out, and I drew the art on it.
Awesome.
And it's
Christmas record?
Yeah, my Christmas record's coming out on vinyl. The one that I did a couple years ago, we're putting it out on vinyl. And I tried to get a real cartoonist to do art for it, and I couldn't. So then I was like, I'll just do it. And,
awesome.
And it's okay.
I've seen that drawing that you've done for it.
Yeah. I redrew it. I did like a new drawing of it. But and there's a part of me every now and then that thinks like, oh, it'd be nice to do like a comic book, or it'd be nice to try something. But The closest I ever came to achieving any of those things was when the Gethard Show started out on public access for like the first,
of course,
13 or so episodes. Then a few times after that, Gethard asked me to do short films for when they were on public access, and I made these films with Mayal Dolivo, who's an actual cartoonist.
She's an incredible artist.
Yes. Yeah, and I came up with an idea where we get a suggestion from Twitter from the audience every week, and then we'd have 1 week to make the next week's film. And the idea was that Mayal would do all the visuals and then give me just raw footage with no structure to it. And then I would edit the footage into a shape and then do a soundtrack for it to make it a final film. So she would just do almost like contentless visuals, like visuals that didn't have a structure or a story. And then I would make a story out of them. Wow. And then do the voices and the editing and stuff.
And those are so cool. And they're like beautiful pieces. Some of them.
I think they're really great, especially great considering we did them with no money and almost no time. And we just had no resources because it was just the early days of Gethard Show on MNN. It was just like nothing. And I mean, I can say confidently that like if you go back and watch the first episode of the Gethard Show on MNN, and I don't think Gethard would even mind me saying this, that the lone we called them the Lone Cornmeal Machine was the name of the shorts. The short that we contributed to the first episode was the best thing in that episode.
When he was on here, he said it was terrible for a while.
Yeah, he's open about that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be insulted by that. No. It's not intended as an insult. But like we did one where the suggestion was torsion, and so Mayal did this claymation short of a guy getting a torsion, a testicular torsion. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
And it's where the testicles.
Yes, we did.
Well, some of your listeners might not know.
Okay.
Do you want them all Googling it instead of listeling?
No, you're right.
No, I want. We should explain it just like
3,000 people all Googling it because you don't want to hear it.
Just like we should intro the show, we should explain this.
The testicles get all twisted up, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it.
Sure, it's like headphones. It's like your headphones if you put them in your pocket.
But it's not. But you can't do anything to prevent it. If it happens, it just happens.
It just happens.
It's excruciating pain, and you have to immediately get an operation, or else they'll die. And your testicles will die.
Wow, and they don't want to.
Yeah,
they got a life.
So we did this animated short that was like a guy getting a torsion and then going to the doctor. God. So this crying clay man going to the doctor and getting an operation. And I did this. I edited the footage, and it did like the soundtrack and added music and stuff like that. And then it ended with a cutting to a shot that I pulled off of YouTube of an actual testicle operation. So it was like such a gut punch ending for a cartoon. But I remember when that aired, and I remember thinking it wasn't my goal, but I'm like, oh, I'm doing the thing that I wanted to do as a kid, which is I'm making cartoons. And it happened like with no notice, with no planning, just all of a sudden because I like basically partnered with someone who knew how to do the stuff I couldn't do. Yeah. But the end result was clearly like a cartoon that I had helped create and so we did that for a while, and then we still always harbor this hope that someone somewhere will be like I keep hoping that someone some UCB person will get a TV show and be like, I would love to have like Lone Cornmeal shorts in it or something, like some like little animated segments that are like weird and funny. But we did that for a while, and that was really fun. And it really did feel like, I accidentally like achieved my childhood goal without trying or without thinking about it. I didn't realize until I'd already done it that I was like, this was the thing I wanted. This was the feeling I wanted, which was making a cartoon and then showing it to people, and people were like laughing and enjoying it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's the first me that used to be me. It was this kid who wanted to draw cartoons and draw comics and make cartoons, and then I gave that up because I didn't want to ruin it. Which in some ways I look back and think, was that cowardly, or was that like quitting? But I don't think I was going to become good enough at it to be happy doing it. So I think I did. I think it was like me, because the other things that I have tried to do, I've gotten good enough at them that I'm happy doing them. Whereas I think I'd still be frustrated by
horses.
Not being able to draw a horse right.
Like perspectives and shit like that. It's like there's a ton of work that goes into it.
There's just so much, and it's stuff that didn't interest me.
Yeah.
And
so then the next you was
the next me, I would say, was the me in my 20s that was trying really hard to become an actor and a filmmaker and become successful in show business.
And this is in New York, right?
Partly in New York. It ended in New York.
Okay.
It started in London, Liverpool and London, and ended in New York.
Did you go to school in London?
I went to school in Liverpool. I went to the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, which was a school that Paul McCartney started he sort of built it out of his old, like the school that he went to as a kid had become this great old building that had fallen into ruin. And he was like, why don't we make it I'll put all my money in it. We'll make it a school for the kids who want to do art. Acting, rock and roll, music.
You should do a podcast where you interview yourself playing celebrities.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, Connor.
Imagine you could have Paul McCartney interviewing you.
Yeah.
How amazing would that be?
So the idea for the podcast is I am always the guest, but I'm interviewed by, hello, welcome to the Paul McCartney podcast. This week, my guest, you've seen him on Orange is the New Black and Search Party. Might have seen him on the Chris Gethard Show. And he's an alum of the school I started. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a great idea for a podcast.
That would be so fun. It would just suck editing it.
Oh, yeah. I'm already exhausted at the idea of doing more than the Paul McCartney one.
But think about it. You could do the Ira. You could, you're Mr. Rogers. You got 3 in the bag.
Got 3. See, I've never imagined auditioning for Saturday Night Live. I've always been a fan of the show. And for some weird reason, it was just never been in my mind that it was a goal. I never thought of myself as the kind of person who would be on that show. Yeah. And one of the things I would always think was the fact that they're like, when you audition, you got to do a couple of celebrity impressions or something. I was just like, well, I don't have any. But I don't think I have any that I could do on TV though, because
sure.
I don't know if I can do it anymore, and this might sound bad, but I think there was a point where no one was doing impressions of Obama yet, and I in 2007, I think I had a really good Barack Obama audio impression, but obviously I can't.
We could hear it still, right?
No, it was a very, it was a lot of the, well, nope. It was a lot of I don't think that there will be too much chance.
Connor,
where it's that kind of soft.
You have to do this.
Do you do animated voiceover stuff at all?
I've never gotten hired to do. I've auditioned for stuff. I've never gotten hired to do it.
At one time, I got all the Mel Blanc voices for Looney Tunes because they were doing like a reboot or something. I was like, these voices are so good. Like I could do I could do whatchamacallit, the guy with the guns, the big mustache.
Yosemite Sam?
Yeah, I could do Yosemite Sam, but I couldn't do any of the other ones.
Don't just say
Let's hear it.
What does Yosemite Sam say?
It says, you razzle frazzle varmint.
It's razzle frazzle varmint, like something like that.
Yeah, that's great.
That's pretty good.
That's the hard thing about that voice. I think is just that I feel like immediately it's like it's just your throat tearing itself to ribbons.
Yes.
I could do one impression.
Let me hear it.
James Gandolfini's breath.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I can't believe the same dude did all those voices. Like they're just fucking incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, I went to this Paul McCartney school,
sure.
And then I went down to London to become an actor, and I had a little bit of success briefly.
Doing what?
I was in a play. I was in a really good play called Four at the Royal Court Theatre. I think it's been made to a movie since then with like Wendell Pierce.
Okay. And it's like, and you got like press about it. People.
Yeah, like a good review in like the Guardian. It was just like felt like I was really starting. I was, I guess, probably 23, maybe around then.
That's amazing for a 23-year-old.
Yeah. And it felt like I immediately moved to London and was like in a play in the West End.
Yeah.
It was a good play and I knew I was good in it.
That's amazing. And
then, I've told this on other things, so I'll just tell the quickest possible version of it.
Sure.
There was a point where, so I was fired by Tom Hanks. I've
heard this story, but can you tell it from the top?
Yeah.
This is such a good story.
The short version of this is basically just that I was hired for the show Band of Brothers, and it got all the way up till the day before I was supposed to start filming, and then I was getting ready to go down to London. I get a phone call from my agent, says Tom Hanks has seen your audition tape, and I had auditioned so many times. It's one of those things where you're going through the process again and again. Every audition,
and you booked it.
I booked it, yeah. But it was like every audition, there were more people there representing HBO and Spielberg and Hanks, and they had all their people there. It was a small speaking part. And the day before, they're like, Tom Hanks was directing the episode I was in, and they were like, you got to come to London right now. I'm like, I'm getting ready to come down later this afternoon. No, you have to come down right now. Tom Hanks has seen your audition tape, and he's having second thoughts. He thinks you have dead eyes. So I had to rush to the train station, get on a train, go all the way down to London. They had a car waiting for me to take me to the airfield where they were filming it. I waited around for like an hour and a half. And then I had to re-audition for Tom Hanks in the room. And
who's in the room besides you and Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks is there. He's sitting on a couch, not unlike the couch you guys are sitting on right now. And he's at his end of Castaway, done filming weight. So he doesn't have that big crazy beard. He's like
thin.
He looks like he's dying because he lost so much weight. And he was just like in sweatpants. I'm like, this is what it looked like, what they made him up to look like at the end of Philadelphia almost. It was just kind of like he looked haggard and gray stubble and everything. And I go into the room.
Maybe he wasn't thinking right at the
time. No, the casting director, like everyone was on eggshells around me because they knew why I was there. This actor is like about to be fired, basically, is what they knew. So like all these British people are all very British around me. They're all very like, you know what this is all about, yes. I'm like, I know. Oh, good. You know? And so everyone was uncomfortable because they had all hired me.
They were all super British around you.
All of these people, I was the reason I was in this position, was that they had said he should be this character. And so then I go into the room and Tom Hanks is sitting there and he gets up off the couch. Hey, how you doing? Oh, great. And said, nice to meet you. He's like, all right, so let's do it. Let's do the scene.
Yeah.
And this character didn't have a lot of dialogue because he's just like, it's when, who's the guy from Homeland?
Mandy Patinkin.
No, the Brody. He's on Billions now. I forget that guy's name.
I know. Yeah.
Everyone knows his name.
Yeah.
Everyone, 3,000 people are shouting his name right
now. Red hair Joe.
Yeah. He was this actor. He was in Band of Brothers. His character gets promoted, and suddenly he's an officer and he's away from his men who are in the battlefield, and he feels guilty about it. And I'm the private who's like tending to him. So it's really a character that's there just to be like, I'm like a manifestation of what he's bothered by. It's like, do you need any more coffee or tea? Do you need anything? And what he needs is to be back with his men. Yeah. He feels bad. So there's not a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of me like standing around while other people talk. So we're doing the scene, and it's like there's this producer reading all the lines, and then my lines are like, "Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Do you need anything else, sir?" And that's it. So and the other people all doing like the talking to each other stuff.
You like can't mess it up.
Yeah. But you also can't be impressive doing it.
Yeah.
And you can't really make your eyes pop while you're doing it.
And you know that the note is dead eyes
at
this
is
point?
Dead eyes.
So you're coming to London to prove you don't have dead eyes?
I spent 3.5 hours trying to imagine how do you say yes, sir, no, sir, in a way where your eyes don't look dead, but you also don't look like someone who absolutely shouldn't be in Band of Brothers. Like, you're just like, yes, sir. And like, if your eyes pop, then it's like, we can't have that in the scene. It'll be a distraction.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what? I'm like trying to make my eyes look less dead, but not too lively.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we do the scene. It's over. And then Tom Hanks goes, oh, is that it? Oh, I wish there were more.
Oh, my God.
So I'm like, and in hindsight, I had just made I'd written and produced and acted in this feature film that was part of my like trying to be successful. And there's an actor in it who's like pals with Tom Hanks. They like were pals back in the day, and this actor was like, Tom Hanks cast him in That Thing You Do. He was the dad in That Thing You Do, the guy. And so in hindsight, I've always wondered, what if I'd said like, oh, by the way, so-and-so says hi. Like if I'd said like, I just wrote a movie and this guy, if I had been like personable and I'd said this, maybe he'd be like, oh, it's great. Oh, no, you know him? Yeah, where maybe it would have been enough that, oh, you don't need to fire that kid. He's fine. It's 3 lines. Like.
It seems so crazy that a peripheral character, in an episode that he's directing that already got cast.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a million reasons why, but.
I thought that the story was that you were going to be like a regular character on the show.
Well, it was possible that the character was going to come back in the 10th episode. Okay. That's what I was told. It was definitely in the 5th, possibly in the 10th. But it was a small part. It wasn't a big part. But for me, it would have been the kind of thing that would have been a first sort of big credit. Yeah. It would have been something.
To be on TV the first time is very exciting.
Yeah. And
it's HBO too. Like, I mean, they bring people back. It's like, yeah.
And so I leave the room and I sit there for about 5 minutes, and then the casting director who cast me comes out of the room, and she like kneels down in front of me and she says, Connor, they've decided to go another way.
Oh.
And I remember in that moment, I remember feeling like I lost control of myself, sort of, where I remember saying to her, I've already spent some of the money because I hadn't received the payment for it yet, but I had already like planned in terms of like,
sure.
I didn't go wild. It was going to be like a couple grand or something.
Sure,
I think.
But when you're an actor,
but it was like when you're month to month, I was just like,
Yeah.
I had paid like a tax bill that I'd gotten, and she was like, oh no, you'll be paid. Like it's just, you won't be. And I remember thinking like, I would pay them the money if they would not fire me.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, I'll agree to do it for no money if they'll just let me be in it and let me be. I've told everybody I know that I'm in this. Like everyone's excited for me, and then this is such a small thing. It's really like not. It's just a thing that happens all the time. But this is huge to me at that time.
Yes.
And
how old are you?
I am 24, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe 25. I can't remember what part of the year it fell in. I think I was 24.
Yeah.
And the driver who I'd been driving around was a guy named Bernie, and he'd been like talking to me because I'd come down the week before. They'd cut my hair, they'd fitted me, all this stuff, and so I had this driver being treated really nicely, and I get back in the town car or whatever that they've got me in, and Bernie's there, and I remember at the end of it, he takes me to London, and I remember Bernie saying to me like, so be seeing you again soon then, Connor. And I remember saying to him like, no, Bernie, I don't think we'll be seeing each other again. And for some reason I had rented, because I'd been a local hire at London, even though I was living in Liverpool at the time. So I had like paid for my accommodations for the week at for some reason a YWCA, which is I don't know why I would be allowed to stay in one of those.
A women's?
Yeah. Which is also funny because...
Why would you even try to say that?
I think it was a place that just had a room that was available and was cheap. But also, isn't that the premise of Bosom Buddies? That they like dress up like women?
Yes. Tom, I'm staying in a YW...
These dead eyes are staying in the women's hostel.
Yeah, me and a buddy of mine, we got to dress up.
I think it was like a YWCA, but for some reason it had like men and women both staying. It was like, but then I was just stuck in London for the week because I'd already like paid for this, and I didn't really feel like going back to Liverpool. So I just I remember wandering around London the next day, and there were all these giant posters for the Green Mile because it had just come out there. Oh. And so there's all these like, if you look at the original poster for the Green Mile, it's just this like noble looking. I'm like, most people when they get fired from a job do not have to look at posters of their guy who fired them.
Wow.
But then like when the show aired, first of all, the cast director told me that they decided to go with a more military type. That was what they told me.
Yeah.
Which made no sense because it's not like this guy doesn't storm the beach. He's the T-boy.
He's a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Helper.
And when I saw the series, eventually the guy who did it, they cut almost all of the lines anyway. Almost all of the dialogue is gone. Like the little arc that they'd built in for this character was, which that would have been its own like disappointment if
but that would have been easier.
But at least would have been, they cut my lines or whatever. But the button on this story, there's a couple, but the one I'll tell you is, I remember watching the premiere episode of Band of Brothers. Which is the one that David Schwimmer is in. And I remember being good. I remember liking it, but I remember being so depressed watching it and thinking like, this is me having to watch this show, which is now like the biggest thing that's happening. This is the thing that people are going to be talking about for the next 10 weeks or 8 weeks or how many episodes it is. And this is the worst. No one should have to endure this. This is the worst suffering, the worst punishment for me to have to endure this. No one has ever had it as bad as me.
Right.
This is a bad thing. And I don't know how I'm going to make it through the next month and a half. And that was September 9th, 2001.
Oh my God.
So,
and are you in New York at this point?
No, I'm in Ashland, Oregon by this point. I got married and decided to take a break from show business. And
And so, girl, you met in
someone I went to school with in Liverpool. Yeah.
So you take a break because of this?
Not because of this. I think I was going to anyway because I was finding it a little bit of struggle anyway, and this was like a bright spot that then turned into a dark spot.
Sure.
But it was just hard. Like we were both actors, and it was just hard.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle being in London. It was a struggle, and so. Yeah, but I just remember that didn't occur to me until years later that I was like, oh, that really what a depressed person I was on September 9th. And like 2 days later, I would just be like, oh yeah, I didn't get cast in Band of Brothers, but it's not the end of the world. Like, I mean, I
thought the joke that you were going to say was that you didn't know how you were ever going to make it through, and then you watched Band of Brothers about young men in war dying.
Yeah, I mean, that would have worked too.
And you go, how am I ever going to...
No one has suffered like me.
Yeah. No one feels the pain I feel. And literally someone goes, told my mom I want my mommy.
Yeah, I mean, it works in both directions. From both the future and the past have the sandwich. It's like, there's World War II and there's 9/11, but in between, have you heard the story of Private Zelensky and the casting of Connor, and the uncasting of Connor Ratliff?
The uncasting is so funny.
But, you know, this is the thing. Like, I get up to, and this is what I think of in terms of my 20s. And who I am now, like the person I was in my 20s and the person I am now. I think I spent my 30s getting rid of the person I was in my 20s, and the person I was in my 20s was someone who had a lot invested in trying to become successful in show business, and I did a lot of things in my 20s that were like, it was really important to me. And obviously, I work in show business now, and I'm trying to do things.
You are successful,
yeah, but the thing that's different is that it doesn't matter to me as much.
Why?
I like it, and I'm not ungrateful for the success I've had. But weirdly, none of the success happened until I let go of the
desire.
Yeah, and it was really hard to do because it's all I wanted. And it sounds weird. It almost sounds like, now that I'm saying it, sounds like I'm broken because. It's like in order to want the sandwich, you have to lose the hunger for it, and then just like cram the meat and bread into your joyless mouth.
I think I get that, and I've heard other people say it like here and there. But what about like just earning a living, like in terms of financial? Like, are you like, nah, I'll be okay doing X, Y, or Z?
I think it's that I will be. I think I'll be okay. I hope I'll be okay, but. I spent my 20s just obsessing over like the fact that I had to. And it's like, I would look at other people being successful and think like, oh no, like I remember being like 24, 25 and looking at like Matt Damon or something like that and being like, he was successful when he was 18. Like he was already like, it's too late for me. Like I remember feeling like it's too late for me. I've already blown it.
Yes. When I only did music, I would always compare myself to John Lennon.
Right. And,
which is insane.
And when you're thinking about it in terms of like the age that people become successful, you start holding on to those like few outliers of like, well, so-and-so didn't start until they were 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you start passing those and then you're like, oh no. You know, like I mean, like I did so many things in my 20s that were all huge failures. Like just everything I tried was a failure. And I made I won't mention the movie that I made because I don't like plugging it particularly.
Sure.
It feels like a different person made it. I don't think it's bad. I think it's
the feature that you made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I put so much of myself into it. And it was around that same time. Like we literally we made this movie. A friend of mine directed it. I act in it and I wrote it and produced it. And we did everything to try to get this as like a calling card to like get us other things. And it never got me anything. Even though I think there are certainly parts of it that I could show that would be like, oh wow, this is good. Like this part's good or what, you know. It was sort of about like two like childhood friends who had this like toxic relationship, but had remained friends long. It was like about a childhood friendship that should have ended when they were children, but now they're adults and they're just like stuck to each other.
Sure.
And they have my character was like married and had kids and just wanted to have the life of like, he just wanted to watch movies and hang out with his friend. And the other friend was like, desperately wanted to be in a relationship. Like they wanted each other's lives, but they were sort of trapped in this poisonous like friendship. Yeah. And we got into South by Southwest.
Oh, awesome.
And we got accepted into South by, and so we were like, that's great because that's like a writer-centric film festival.
Yeah.
And everybody in the industry loves going to Austin for that festival, and they're in a good mood to see stuff, and you make connections and you get all this stuff. So we got accepted to South by Southwest for this movie in August of 2001 for October of 2001. So it was like the height of like the anthrax, like the planes had just started flying again. Yeah. So it was just like no one was going to Austin unless they had to.
Yeah.
So it was like everybody who had a film there like braved the like, we're going to get on these planes, we're going to go to Austin. Then you go there and it was just like there was nobody. It was just like I went, but there was like nobody there looking at movies. There was no one there.
Worst South by Southwest year.
Yeah. And then, we
9/11 was the worst year for South by Southwest.
And so there was like a lot of stuff like that where I would just feel like I would try my best. I was really, I moved I was in Oregon for a couple of years, taking a break from showbiz, and then I moved back to New York. And I tried for several years, I tried very hard to become an actor again. And what I found was that in like 2 years' time, everything I'd ever done was just gone, meaningless, because all my contacts were in London. None of them helped me in New York. Yeah. I remember going and doing one of those like sessions where you pay to have a casting director talk to you and then you get to audition for them at the end of it.
Yeah.
And do they still do those? I don't even know if that. Yeah. I remember hearing at one point that those were either illegal or not, or there was someone saying they shouldn't be illegal or something in LA because it counts as like paying for a job interview. Or there was some talk about that. I don't.
No, they're still
they will do that.
They're still
there.
around. They're still expensive. And tons of people do it. I've done one, and you feel horrible.
Well, I remember I did one of them, and it was for this casting director, and he gave his little lecture at the beginning. And then I did the audition for him, and then he was looking. He's like, "You were in this play at the Royal Court Theater," and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Why are you signing up for this session?
Yeah,
like you should be auditioning for real things." I was like, "Oh, great," but also like, that's shitty that you know that. like he was literally like saying like, "Why are you in here with all these suckers that I'm bilking out of their money?
Yeah,
you should be a real actor." And I was like, "Great." I was like, "I'm going to give you a name of an agent. I don't know if she's taking on any young people at the moment, but like I really think she should see you, and I'm going to recommend you to her and whatever."
Yeah.
So I went and met with this agent, and I'd made her a little reel on like a VHS tape. This was like 2002 or so, and I made this like, and I remember having this meeting with her. I don't remember her name, but I remember her being really shitty. And she was like, at one point she was like, "So have you ever, you went to drama school in England? Does that mean you're classically trained?" I said, "Oh yeah, I've done a lot of Shakespeare." And I did Shakespeare in the park when I was in high school. I set up like a group and we did like a free Shakespeare plays in my hometown. And she's like, "Can I tell you something? Never read a Shakespeare." And she said it with such beaming pride.
That's like her. That's what she does every time she meets anyone.
And I remember thinking, like, cool, like,
why ask then?
Yeah, but she wanted to brag because she wanted to be like, I never have.
And look at me, like, and look at how far I've gone.
Yeah.
And so then I left her my reel.
Yeah.
And there's not much on it. But
so it's just all Shakespeare.
I had like clips from the movie that I'd made and a couple of other little things. And she said, "Call." She goes, "I'm getting ready to go on my honeymoon, but give me a call in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, and we'll touch base, and I'll have had time to watch."
And she was on one of the planes in September.
Oh my god!
And so a week later, I call, and she's like, "Oh, I just got back." Or 2 weeks later, I call, and she's like, "I just got back. I haven't had a chance to look at your reel yet, but give me a call in a week, and we'll touch base then." So I call back a week later, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't had a chance to look at your reel yet. Give me a call in a week." And I was like, "You know what? I didn't say this. This is what I said to myself. I said, you know what? I'm going to leave it 2 weeks. That way, she'll definitely have watched the reel."
Sure.
So 2 weeks later, I call up, and she goes, "You know, I'm going to be honest. I haven't had a chance to look at your reel yet.
Oh, my God.
And I'm really swamped right now. And why don't you... because come into the office and pick up your reel so you can own that. And we can just touch base, maybe 6 months down the line and see what's happening. And so I went in to pick up my reel.
That she hadn't watched.
And I remember that was her exact wording because I remember the pause before. She was like, so you can own that. I'm just like, own that? What do you... And did you watch it and not like it? You can say that, That would feel better than
Sure, give you a note.
Yeah.
If she'd said, like, there's not a lot there, or, like, I don't know what I'm looking at, that would have been different than, like, I just won't put it in the machine and watch it. So I went in to pick up, she had an office near Times Square, one of those places that you, like, go, you buzz in. I buzzed up, but it was one of those where you got to get buzzed into the office itself, too.
Yeah.
So I went up there, and they're like, do you have an appointment? They, like, yelled through the thing, like, do you have an appointment? I'm like, no, I was just told to come in and pick up my my reel, my acting reel. And she goes, oh, she's not here right now. I'm like, no, she told me to come in anytime and pick up the reel. No, you'll have to make an appointment. Like, you won't let me in and okay, keep it. Keep the tape.
Oh my
God. Like, I won't come back for it. And I came all the way in just to get this, okay, bye. And I think it was around that point that I was like, I put on a play. I wrote a play and put on a play. And it was like one of those like actors equity showcase things where you have to charge like a $25 ticket in order to have equity actors in it. And what I discovered was it was like, it's really hard to get people to come see something in New York City because there's a lot already going on. Mm-hmm. And even if there isn't, everybody can just go home and do things they like at home. Like, it's just a lot to ask anyone to just come see a play.
Yeah.
So, like, we did a good production of a play I wrote, and I was like, it's too hard. I can't get anybody interested. I can't get someone to watch my videotape that they asked me to give them.
Yeah.
And I gave up on pursuing acting. This is probably around 2004, I'm thinking-ish. And I decided I was going to write, and I wrote a novel, and I couldn't get it published. And then there was a point, like where I just really had to come to terms with the fact that, like, I'm investing too much of myself in, I can't be happy unless I get validation from other people for this was what sucked, is I knew I was good. I knew I'm good at acting, and I know I'm good at, like, creative things. And I just can't find anybody to validate that. And I'm miserable because and I'm like, and why? What is the point? Why do I need this validation from strangers? Why do I need a bunch of strangers to like me?
Yeah.
And I started actively trying to pull myself out of that mentality. And
what are some things that you did, like things that you did to, like, get yourself out of that?
That's interesting. I part of it was just trying to appreciate, like I was like, I like watching, like, movies and TV shows. That doesn't mean I also like eating Irish sausages.
Right.
Yeah. That doesn't mean I want to make them. And so I thought, like, maybe I'm confused. Maybe I made the mistake of liking a thing as a kid and thinking, oh, I'll be happy if I do that.
Yeah.
And really, I'm just a fan of those things. And the fact that I'm good at doing parts of them is just an inconvenient reality. It's just an inconvenient, like, because I don't like this industry. I don't like the way people, I didn't like the way I was treated. Everybody treated me like I was nothing. And even, like, the Tom Hanks story, I've said it because it's interesting because it's Tom Hanks and because it's this big, like, crazy thing that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that he was doing a job that involved recreating World War II on even an HBO-sized TV budget. That is he had 1,000,001 things going on. And if he looked at my table and was like, I don't like this actor that we've picked, then, that's a legit call. The thing that I was left with was feeling like, well, like, even if he had said, one word to me about the fact that I was being fired. Like, it was treated like it was an audition, like I was trying out for a thing, not that I was being judged and fired from it. And even if there'd been some acknowledgement of, this is a messy process, there's a lot of factors involved. I'm so sorry. Like, the slightest acknowledgement of that would have felt a little bit human to me. And instead, and that was just one of many interactions. I had so many interactions that all felt like I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be treated like this. None of it felt good. Like, I just got to the point where I'm like, none of this feels good. Yeah. And what I realized was, looking back, I'd been doing plays since I was 10. And when I was in high school and college, I made little movies with my friends for fun. We would improvise little movies where we'd like edit in camera and make these things. And we're thinking, like, that's fun. I like that. Yeah. And the more I got into doing it as a profession, I was like, I'm a million miles away from the thing that I thought this was when I started.
Yeah.
And like, I can't do it. I'm auditioning for plays I don't like. I'm auditioning for commercials and TV shows and things like that that I don't want to do.
Yep.
There were just so many things. Like, when I was in London before things started really going bad, I threw auditions. There were auditions where I'm like, I don't like this play. I don't want to do it, but I'm too scared to tell my agent. So I would modulate my audition in a way that would make me just slightly unacceptable for the part.
Wow. Is there stuff now you just are like, no? Like, I mean, what? Well,
what's weird,
because of that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, I don't want to do stuff that I don't want to do.
Right.
Like, and I'm a little bit better about, like,
you've told me that you said no to things.
Yeah, and it feels good. It used to feel rude, like, oh, someone's asking, I should do it. No, it was weird because I just had to start valuing the things that actually made me happy.
Yeah.
And stop caring about the things that could hurt me.
So it was just more of an awareness. Like, you were just like, okay, I'm aware of this thing that is not helping me. It's not serving me, and I don't want to live my life like this anymore.
Yeah, and I can't. I was just like, I can't allow show business to be the thing that makes me happy or not. I can't give it that weight. Yeah. And I'm still like that, to the point where I can get annoyed by it, but it's sort of like I've boxed it in. I've boxed those feelings in, that I'm saving my grief for the things that deserve it.
Yeah.
And because they're all coming. They're all coming.
Yeah.
And
honestly, us pursuing this shit is just avoiding the ones that are coming.
Yeah. I mean, like, every bad thing that you think is going to happen is going to happen. Yeah. And it's just not worth it. Like, and actually, here's what changed. So I spent several years completely detached from the idea of show business. And then there was a point where...
What job are you just getting?
The same job that I worked at the month I moved to New York City was Barnes & Noble Union Square. It was a 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. was my original shift. So I'd work for a few hours before the store opened. And then I'd be there for a few hours while the store was open. And I had that shift from 2002 until 2015. And I was happy in that job. Yeah. I got unhappy in that job because Barnes & Noble's management has gotten ridiculous. They're very bad now. I mean, maybe they're better now, but they got very stupid, and they became as difficult as working in show business eventually. Like, for most of that time, we had a store manager who was great because he was like, we run a bookstore, and it's like he would protect you from the stupid things.
Sure.
And
because the job is a light job.
Yeah. And it's a job that, like, there's this whole thing with Barnes & Noble right now where they're like, can Barnes & Noble stay alive as a company? And there's an investor group that bought up, I think, a bunch of stock, and they're trying to get Barnes & Noble back on track. I called the office of the investor of this group a few months ago.
You're a sicko.
I read this article saying this investor, who's the head of this investment group, is trying to make Barnes & Noble change some of the stupid things they're doing. So I looked up this guy's number. This was a few months ago. And I called this investment firm. I called this investor.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, I used to work at Barnes & Noble Union Square, and I have some thoughts. And I would like to talk to this guy. And I talked to this guy for like 25 minutes.
Oh, my
God. I was like, I want to hear your ideas, and I want to let you know that this company, I mean, they've just fired a lot of people, but like this company doesn't listen to its smart employees. And it's very easy. You run a bookstore like Barnes & Noble, it's very easy to do. Yeah. All you have to do is be a good store that people want to shop at, and you're done. And the problem is, for most of the time, and no matter what problems come up, you can adapt to those as long as you just keep running a good bookstore. Any good bookstore that's currently thriving is good because of that simple thing. They run a good bookstore, and that's it.
Yeah.
And once you figure out what makes a good bookstore good, you just do those things.
Yeah.
And keep doing them and modify them as needed. So it's like if let's say you want to order a pizza and have the pizza.
Now we're talking.
Well, you order the pizza, and then the pizza arrives, and if it's a good pizza, you eat it.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. Imagine if there was someone whose livelihood depended on improving that process every year.
Well, that's what Pizza Hut is.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's what it is. It goes, we'll fill this with we'll fill the bacon. We'll do a bacon crust. It's like, that's not what I fucking want. I want cheese and sauce and bread.
Everything that's public becomes that, right? Yeah. Like everything that goes public has to be that.
It's ridiculous. And and so there are people who work higher up who are paid a lot of money at Barnes & Noble who realize that if they don't have a big idea this year, their job isn't justified.
Sure.
Now, the truth is that person should just be fired, and that money should be given to the people who work in the stores.
Right.
Yeah.
There are people who work higher up at Barnes & Noble who are taking the money from the people who will make the stores good so that those people can struggle to implement their bad ideas. So anyway, I'm off on a tangent here, but anyway, I called and told this investor all this. But I was very happy for most of the time I was at Barnes & Noble because it was simple. It was just like, all I have to do is make sure, like, here was when I worked there, I had a bunch of sections I was in charge of. And what I would do is I would make sure that if there were interesting books, we would try to get them into the store. If those books didn't sell, eventually we wouldn't have them. But if they did sell, we'd keep getting them in.
Yeah.
And you just keep track of it.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Nice, that job.
Yeah. It was a really satisfying job. And what they do is stuff like, they look at, today is July 10th, and we sold fewer books this July 10th than we did last July 10th.
Yeah.
And then you say to them, that's because a Harry Potter book came out last July 10th. It's not going to be as big if we don't have a Harry Potter book today. Sure. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And I remember one time I asked to take over the humor section. This was while I was doing UCB and I was working at Barnes & Noble, and I made the section great. For 1 year, Barnes & Noble Union Square had the best humor book section of any Barnes & Noble in the country. I'm sure of it. And I was told a few months into it, the sales have gone way down. And I'm like, there's no way that's possible. I've made the section so good.
Yeah.
Like, the sales have dropped. What can I tell you? So I got someone, they wouldn't give me the sales data. So I got someone a little higher up to sneak me some of the sales data to look at it. And what I discovered was the sales had gone up for everything except Nora Ephron had died a year earlier. And so all of her books sold a lot more the month she died than they did a year later in that same month. And that was all they looked at. And I'm like, every other single book that we had, we were selling more of.
Wow.
And I'm just like, your job is numbers. My job is just keeping these books stocked.
Sure, and they couldn't do their job.
Brutal.
But that sounds like a nice job to have.
It was a nice job mostly. And I honestly, if the management at Barnes & Noble hadn't gotten so stupid, I would have been happy to stay working there forever.
Do you feel happy now that you're a working actor and you're...
At the moment, I do. I mean, right now, I was happier probably a year ago when I had like the President Show and the Gethard Show as kind of regular gigs.
Yeah.
Sure. And now it's like a year later, and President Show's like doing the occasional special, and Gethard Show's done. So like
you were part of two
great
comedies.
For a few months there, I had a gig where I worked 1 day a week, and it was that I would do President Show in the afternoon and then walk across town and do Gethard Show live.
Awesome.
So awesome.
And it was like, I remember walking through Midtown Manhattan and thinking, well, this is what I imagined would be nice. Like, this is like, and neither of them were high pressure gigs. They were not things I stressed about.
They were all your friends.
Yeah.
It's just my friends had TV shows and they let me do funny things on them.
At what point did you start doing creative stuff again?
So 2009, it's funny because my mom did like community theater, and my mom's family was all creative, and my dad had been a professional actor before he went into local TV. My dad did improv in Chicago with Del Close. Like, he was part of a for a year, he auditioned for a team that Del Close, when Del Close was on the outs with Second City, he set up this group called the Chicago Extension, and he auditioned like 8 or 9 people, basically a Herald team before they were called that. Yeah. And for a year, they would rehearse and do shows.
Wow.
I have a poster in my apartment of my dad's improv group. And so from like 2002 when I was in New York until 2009, and this was at an age like now maybe improv is a little bit more widely seen as like a stepping stone or something. Sure. But I would always hear people talk about like, oh, I can't explain to my parents what I do doing improv at UCB.
Yeah.
My parents spent from like 2002 until 2009 being like, you know, Amy Poehler has an improv theater. Why don't you go? And I was like, I don't want, like, I remember seeing a show at UCB like in 2003 or something.
Yeah.
I think it was really funny. And then I remember asking someone like, hey, how does someone get to do shows here? Like, how do you perform? They're like, well, you take these classes. I was like, nope, never mind. I've already done drama school in 2 different countries and I don't want to do it. And then at a certain point I was like, well, maybe I'll try an improv class for fun and see what it's like. And then I really liked it. The interesting thing about it, though, was I genuinely did not go into UCB thinking that I would ever be on a house team, and certainly didn't think that it was I really backed into doing show business again.
Sure.
I've resisted it every step of the way.
You were just having fun.
But you know why? You know what? You were here, and you're just authentically being you. And you're not hungry anymore, so the sandwich appeared, huh?
A little bit. And it was sort of like what I liked about UCB was that it was a creative home for me. Yeah. It was like a place where I could be creative and people could see me. And I mean that both in the sense like you can come see a show, but also like in the more new agey sounding kind of like people could see me. Like if you were talented and you took classes at UCB, people would notice it.
Yeah, they'd say hi to you. Yeah, like comedians you respected,
and they would value it. And it was also very different than drama school. I'll tell you one thing that was different in drama school, because I had 2 years of classes, 2 years of being a drama major at MU in Columbia, Missouri, and then I went over to Liverpool. What I found is, and this is something I realized with hindsight, is a lot of people who were like teaching drama, at least the ones that I encountered, there was a lot more of like a disappointed actor who's ended up as a drama teacher.
Yeah.
And there is a hostility. Like I had classes in drama school that were openly like hostile gestures toward the students. And I think they were coming from a place of like
bitterness.
Yeah. Fuck these like young kids who are going to outpace me and become more successful than me. I don't like this.
And that's not at UCB at all.
No. And part of the reason for that is that like at the time, if you were taking an improv class that was taught by like Zach Woods, Zach Woods has already achieved every goal. He's checked every box in terms of what improv and UCB can offer. He's done it all. He has nothing to be envious about for another improviser. And the showbiz stuff is in a separate lane.
Yeah.
And so the people who are teaching improv are not bitter about good improvisers. They're excited to see them.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it's one thing that is a little bit, not that I want to get into this issue particularly, but sometimes I'll see people talk about like UCB and the improv community and like the performer should be paid. Like you'll see people who are from an outside perspective, whether it's stand-ups or journalists, and they'll talk about this. And the thing that they miss, and in some cases they miss it because the ways it gets talked about are confusing and sometimes not helpful. But I tried all the legitimate means that New York City had to offer for a struggling actor who was good at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was every door was closed to me. Like when people talk about like the angle of like it was
pay to play sort of.
Pay to play. Yeah. Like I put on a play in New York City and I lost so much of my money I couldn't afford to be spending.
Yeah.
And nobody saw it. And
everyone sees you.
Everyone sees me all the time at UCB. And also at UCB, like I just suddenly like for me, and I realize like there are people who make the argument, they're like, well, not everybody can afford to take classes or to spend all this time just to eventually get a result. But, you know, best of luck finding all the other things New York City has to offer, because it's a hostile town to a lot of, it's a town that does, New York City is a town that doesn't need you.
I always, like when people talk about stuff like that or kind of target UCB, I always think about like other institutions that have paid for classes at who like truly don't give a fuck about you at all, never would give a scholarship, don't give a fuck about, like, it's like, at least they're trying.
And you know what? I've done nothing besides like UCB and I'm okay.
Yeah. And I get that that's not everybody's experience of it.
Sure,
but
of course.
And I've also been told when I tell my experience of it as someone who tried every other avenue and did not find a welcoming. And I realize, like I'm a straight white guy that demographically that's not necessarily like something that's going to sound like a particularly inspiring. But then he found a place in improv. A lot of people be like, another like plaid shirted white guy found success in improv.
But you know what? But honestly, what is nice about this conversation is you're so talented. Everyone looks at you and thinks this guy is undeniable, and that's just the way it is right now. And it's so nice to hear that there's a journey to get there.
And the thing that I emphasize is it's not that I'm like, well, it was good to me, therefore it's a good place.
Right.
Yeah.
Is for me, what I genuinely do believe is that like I don't want to pull the ladder up after me. That like I actually believe that there are other people who are in a similar place that I was, where you've tried all of the.
Sure.
I think it's one of those things where like there's a lot of paths to success. Most of them will be closed off to you.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky and glad that there was this one kind of alternative route,
more of a meritocracy, that
it involved me paying for classes and it involved me doing a lot of things on stage that weren't for a paycheck. But the thing that I ended up backing into somewhat is that because I was good and because it was a place that people will go and see because they can afford to, because it's a cheap ticket. Like I could never afford to go see plays in New York City.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even when people are like, you can get cheap tickets here. And it's like, those cheap tickets are often like
$100.
Yeah. A lot of those cheap tickets for things that I hear people talk about some of those things are like, well, that's like, I could go see Death by Ruru for a month and a half.
Yeah.
At that time. And
that's like a group of the most talented fucking people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I started doing stuff at UCB. And I actively, like, I would even tell people I have no interest in acting anymore. I have no interest in doing show business stuff. And then there was a certain point where, like, an agent saw me and was like, do you have a commercial agent? Do you want to do commercials? And I was like, I'll audition for one, sure. And then I got like a lottery commercial, and that helped like pay my rent for that year. And, it was just things like, and there's a lot of show business stuff that I still don't like in the same way. And sometimes I do get pulled into the fact that like I no longer have a day job. So I'm a few months away from being in a position where if I don't book things, then I'd be in trouble.
Sure.
But I still can feel how different I am in the sense that like, well, one thing I know for certain is that doing shows at UCB for no money is I always think of there's that thing in the show Mad Men where Peggy is talking about not being respected. Uh-huh. And Don Draper says that's what the money is for. And I think there's a part where he like throws some money at her. It's like a horrible moment. But whenever I do a gig that's any kind of good money, I always am very aware. Every now and then it's like a fun thing and it's great.
Yeah.
But there's almost always something where I was like, oh, there's a reason why I'm being paid for this. And that's because I would not do this TV show for free. It's taking all day long.
Doing a TV show isn't fun.
It's not fun. It's not fun like watching a TV show. It's fun.
You sit alone for a long time and then you get rushed.
It's not bad. It's not. I'm not complaining about it.
No, please.
But it is one of those things where it's like if someone wanted me to do The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel just for fun, I probably would say like no.
Sure, but you do a show at UCB just for fun,
but
all the time.
And the thing is, like, I remember noticing that, like, there's a reason why people like Jason Mantzoukas and Zach Woods come back and still do UCB shows, despite the fact that they are not hurting for work at all. It's because it is a completely different thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is a hard thing to express to someone who's like, no, it's work and artists should be paid for their labor.
It's also stage time. Getting stage time in front of a full house is invaluable. It's invaluable.
It's also the pressure of part of the reason I did well in improv in classes and the reason that I do well in shows is partly because I'm aware of the fact that like by the time I was taking improv classes, I was aware of what it was like to be a complete failure at everything. And when I was 30 years old, I was less successful than anybody I knew. Like on every level. The only thing I had was I had some good friendships and I had my parents and my sister. But I had a failed marriage, no career, no money, no prospects. I was just like everything I've ever tried to do, and I've spent a decade trying to do it, and it's a bust. And I'm not gonna. And I was lucky that I was able to find a place where I could do things that meant something to me. And also, when I was learning to do improv, I remember thinking, like, well, there's no reason to be nervous about this because what's the downside? That it'll be bad? Okay, that's fine.
You've already failed.
But it's like, if it's bad, so what? We didn't plan it. It was, the goal is to try to figure out, like, I've said this to you about, like, when I'm doing improv, the one thing I am, like, kind of bad at is editing scenes at the end of scenes. There's a thing where you're supposed to run in front of the scene and stop up. And funniest description. And I don't really do it. And I'm upfront about this with people I coach and people I'm on teams with. That I'm like, I'm more likely to enter your scene, even if it's a bad scene. You're more likely to have me come in and be like, "Hey guys, is this wrong for you?" Than I am to edit the scene. And when I'm in a scene, I'm like, well, we're here forever. We're going to stay in the scene forever and ever. And when someone does edit the scene, I always feel a little bit shocked, a little bit like, whoa, wait, what? It's over? But it is just like that. I want to do well. So it's not having a lack of ambition.
No.
But I'm not going to be unhappy if I do a bad scene because I'll just learn I wish I could be like this in more areas of life. The thing that's changed in me, so I've gotten better about things like that. It's made me very bad about planning for the future or even thinking about the future.
Yeah.
I'm very good at living in the moment now. I'm very good at like just being I'm not Buddhist, I'm not religious or anything like that, but like Zen in the sense of like, well, you just have to know that there'll be bad things in the future and we'll deal with those when they happen. But if you can, like, right now I'm sitting here with you guys and I like being around you and this is fun talking.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing else for me.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else. I don't have anything I'm dreading or anything that I'm anticipating. Especially, I have one thing. Elvis Costello drops an album at midnight and I'm excited about that. But I'm generally, big picture, I'm very bad at, like, I had to let go of a lot of things. When I was 30 and one of the things I let go of, that was part of my like troubles about it was like I for a long time just assumed there'd be a point where I would have kids, and I had to go through a real thought process in terms of is that going to happen and is that something that I could do, and I had a thought where and this is maybe oversimplifying, and maybe this is like me like coping and rationalizing, but I had a thought I remember thinking where it's like, well, I'm okay if I screw up my own life. Like worst case scenario, like let's say that the rest of my life is a disaster and nothing good comes of anything. I want to try to be comfortable and be kind to people and to make things as good as they can be, whatever my circumstances are. But I was like, I'm at 30. I failed at everything, and I can be okay with that. I can be okay with like going forward and let's say I never become an actor or a comedian or do cartoons or comics, or I never create anything. I never have a legacy of things. That's okay, because those things ultimately, like, they're important. Like, other people's legacies are important to me. Like, so many like creative people's work, it means so much to me. But at the same time, it all gets forgotten. It all it's only important up to a certain level, and it can be very important, but still ultimately, like, there will come a point when all of the movies that Albert Brooks made won't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Or they'll mean something that's so different that it won't matter. Like Shakespeare's plays are still around, but they're so different now that like, does it really matter to him or to anybody who's around them that like people are doing like, oh, they're still doing it. It's like cool. But like in some level it's like cool, but it's also not that cool. You know, like it just is what it is. So I'm fine if I don't ever achieve anything. Like I've already done more than I thought I would in terms of like, and I have more joy in the things that I do, and I get to work with people that I enjoy working with and stuff like that. But I couldn't bear the thought of creating another person and screwing up their life.
Yeah.
And because I already knew that up to 30, then I'm like, boom, I've messed everything up. And I had this thought of like having a kid and getting to a point where, and this is, I know anybody out there who like has kids, this is probably sounds like a horrible thing to say, you know, like, but I just knew that like, I can't handle it. Like my hat's off. My sister just had a kid and had a beautiful little baby girl. I just can't do it. Like, I just can't like, it was too much for me to think about that. I'm like, well, at least, like I'm already sort of terrified about the idea, and it only occurred to me this year, even though I feel like this is the type of idea that occurs to people like in their freshman year of college or whatever, that like, I was like, what if I find out that life goes on forever and it can't stop and that you can't stop living ever? And it terrified me because I thought, oh, I need it to stop at some point. Like I need it to like,
there needs to be stakes.
Or it's just like the idea that like if I went into it, let's say I die and then I go and they find out, well, guess what? Now you have everlasting life. You live for an infinite amount of time. I think I would have so much more. Maybe you get filled with a wonderful glowing balm that makes it all feel good.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay. But like, if I found out I could live for 1,000 years, I'd be like, okay. If I found out that like, no, even if you die, you keep living. To me, I thought, it really hit me how exhausting that feels.
Oh my
like,
God.
it's just like, never? Like, not even a little? Like,
oh my God.
It's more of a nightmare to me than the idea that I would stop existing.
Sure.
Because I'm just like, how could I? How could I?
And that kind of relates back to your legacy.
Yeah.
Connor, you're such a beautiful man.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. This is nice.
Yeah.
This was really nice. I think it's important that people hear.
Are you kicking me out?
No. No, I'm just saying I think it's important people hear this stuff.
Yeah.
From someone like you. Because I look up to you, and you've only been kind to me the whole time I've known you, right? And so it's
kind to you too, Patrick.
That's true.
This isn't about Patrick right now.
That's true. I mean, I wasn't invited to the movie, but
I will say this, not to make myself a hero, but I will say that you're maybe one of the only people that whenever I see you do something online that I actually reach out and tell you how much I like it.
Oh, thank you.
Because you and I don't spend that much time together.
No, and also the emoji thing you tweeted, I was really happy. I like, when someone you respect enjoys your work, you're like,
and it's not that I'm unsupportive of people, but it's considering that like we know each other casually.
Yeah.
But like we haven't ever really hung out or anything.
Yeah.
But every time I see you do something, I'm always so blown away by it. And I'm talking about three things. So it's also one of those things where it's like, I'm a big fan. But it's only but like, I think I've told you that your, what's the improv show where you rap a Herald?
I did a freestyle Herald called MC Herald a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That and improvised Shakespeare are the two things that I've seen that I couldn't see a second time because I found them too intimidating.
Wow.
That they were like,
wow.
Like I was just like, I don't know how, like in the same way that I don't want to know how a magic trick works.
Sure.
Yeah.
Part of me was scared that I would learn. I don't think I would learn how to do it, but that I would even see where the gears were.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just like, I just want to think that it's magic.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I remember you were the first student in my generation. I saw the movie class and you were so significantly better than me. Like, I remember being like, oh shit, this guy's fucking incredible. And I remember feeling like, and again, like I slowly have learned to not chase accolades or chase appreciation. But at the time, it was like devastating to me that there was someone in my who had like started at the same time who was so much better than me.
Oh, that's nice. I'll tell you in a that made me think of, because I was thinking about like, oh, it's weirdly nice to hear that someone was devastated. But you know, the thing that I actually do like, and it's kind of a bad, I think it's like a nasty impulse to have, but I like it when there's a show and that people can't get into, and you know that they're disappointed. It's not that I like their disappointment, but like there's something that does feel nice about knowing that they were. Because I've been disappointed, like trying to get into stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's sold out. Oh no, like that. But there's something that feels so weirdly strange about it. And it's only happened on a handful of occasions when I've been aware of it. It's like, oh yeah, they had to turn people away. And there's something about, oh, they turned people away. people just like, there's something that's kind of a weird thrill about like someone else had to like figure out what else to do. Like, they tried to get into a show I was doing, and then instead they were like, what? And they're like, let's go get something to eat.
What do you think your life would be like if you never walked away from acting for that period?
Bad. I think it would have been bad. I had to stop. Because even if I had found some success, I think it would have been, what needed to change in me was, it can be important to you, but it can't be that important to you.
Yeah.
If it's that important to you, everybody in this business, it's so rotten. Everybody in this business, you would think as a human that it's like, oh, that guy really wants the job and he's good. We should hire it. But they're like, that guy's good, but he really wants the job.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's that thing where it's like, he's thirsty for it.
It's unattractive to want stuff.
And it's, have you ever seen Broadcast News?
No.
Oh, you'd love Broadcast News. Have you seen Broadcast News?
No.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And, I'm going to look up, because I don't want to get the line wrong. I'm going to look up the line, because there's a line. It's written by James L. Brooks, and it is it's about like TV news in the 1980s, and Albert Brooks plays like a really good, journalist, but he's not like he's not beautiful looking, and William Hurt plays like an anchor. He's really good looking, but less skilled at the proper work of journalism. And Holly Hunter plays a news producer who's like sort of in charge of running the show. And there's a point in this, I'm going to find this quote on IMDb. I got to go to the quotes. I'm in the app on IMDb. There's so many good quotes in this. This quote isn't the one I'm looking for, but this is a great quote where somebody says to Holly Hunter's character, she's saying like, no, it has to be like this. And this executive says, it must be nice to always believe you know better. To always think you're the smartest person in the room. And then Holly Hunter goes, no, it's awful. Such a good line. This whole movie is great lines, but no, this is the line I remember. It's Albert Brooks as Aaron Altman saying, wouldn't this be a great world if insecurity and desperation made us more attractive? If needy were a turn on?
Oh my God.
It's such a good quote. And
that's what you would be.
Yeah. And, but I hate that. I hate that, like, the wanting of it is, and I've seen it too. I've also seen it. Like, I was a reader for auditions when I was first starting out in London, and you could see it. The people who got the parts were the people who walked in the room, and before they said a word, they had the part.
Yeah. They didn't care.
I never believed that until I saw it happen. And it's like the people who came in who were like, I really want this part. And they didn't say that, but they said it with their everything. Sure. And so, like, in order to have any amount of success, I had to stop wanting it.
Yeah.
And I feel myself, whenever I do actually want something, I catch myself because it never pans out, which is, it's a gross way to be, but it is also like, it just can't be that important to me. Like,
absolutely.
And it's not like, if anyone out there is working in film and television, I don't want to discourage them from hiring me.
Sure, hire him.
Of course.
Don't be stupid.
Yeah, I mean, hire him.
But do not hire me for your shows. I'm not interested. Do not pursue me, especially not for anything recurring or series regular.
You do know, though, when you walk into a room, when you walk into an audition and you want it, or when you're doing a show and you fucking want to impress somebody, you already know you're fucked. Yeah. You already know, like, you're like, well, I have already lost.
Yeah.
Well, this sounds terrible, but I'm going to have to leave.
Yeah. An audition?
No, I have therapy and my parents are coming.
To therapy?
Yeah, 4 o'clock.
I don't think that sounds terrible. I think it sounds healthy.
But I just need to cut this short now.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Connor, we thank you so much for doing the show.
I thought we were going to work out all my issues.
Shut up! Please, get the fuck out of here. Connor, what do you want to plug?
Well, you can... I'm on Twitter at Connor Ratliff. You just missed 45 days where I tweeted about almost nothing but Elvis Costello.
Thank God they missed it.
Because the new album drops tonight as of when we're recording this.
Great. And go see Connor. He's the George Lucas Talk Show.
George Lucas Talk Show, the Stepfathers, Ask Cat on Sundays.
Ask Cat Sundays.
If you're in New York, look me up on the UCB website and you'll see some shows.
He's one of the funniest performers in all of New York, so don't fuck around.
You can coming up, I'll be in the second season of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in a very small part.
Which he loved to do.
He loved it.
I would have done it for free.
Fuck out of here. All
right, thanks.
Thank you for listening to Who You Were. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Guest before and after pics on Instagram at Who You Were Podcast. Send your before and after pics to whoyouwerepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Who You Were Podcast. This podcast is produced independently. If you'd like to support it, please visit patreon.com/Patrick Noth. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.